Well, thanks so much, Lauren, for joining me today. Excited to talk about travel and, where do we go from here? Because we had such a long time without traveling, without that invigorating of inspiration and creativity that travel offers all of us. It certainly impacted my life in a major way, and it's impact I think a lot of lives in a lot of ways. But let's talk about your journey first, and maybe how you got into Operation Groundswell, and maybe how travel has impacted your life.
Yeah, definitely. I have always loved to travel, and I've been really lucky to grow up in a family that valued travel and was able to travel with us a bit. And so I was always really keen on it. And I was really excited about sort of hiking and outdoor adventure. But I actually went to school for engineering. And after that program, for everything it was, don't regret a second of it. My first job out of school was actually at Pepsi. And I think I very quickly realized, well within the first year, that I didn't really want to spend all of my time, bottling pop and shipping it around the world. It just, it didn't feel exciting to me. It didn't feel aligned with the things that I really cared about. And it just didn't sort of make me excited or inspired in any way. So I eventually left Pepsi and started just leading hiking trips around the world. I was like, I've got some experience in this. I'm interested in this. I love to travel. I love to hike. Let's just do that. So yeah, I was leading some hiking trips. I was really lucky to visit a lot of really cool places, but ultimately I sort of found that something was missing in the way that we were experiencing these places. We got to sort of see all the nature and see all of the action, but what was missing in a big way was people and culture and sort of learning. There's a lot of sort of like physical, exertion and a lot of challenge there. And a lot of that is mental too. You're reaching the summit of something, but there was so little about the people that we were visiting and the people who were hosting us and the people who were caring for us and sharing their space with us. And so that's sort of how I wound up looking at Operation Groundswell and getting a part of it, because their tagline was backpacking with a purpose, and it still is.
Great.
And at first I was like, I don't really get it. Like, what does that mean? That seems so vague. It seems almost too good to be true. It just didn't seem to make any sense. And I think I only really understood what that meant and how it felt after going on a program and meeting all the people that not only work here at Operation Groundswell, but really importantly, work with us all around the world. We're backpacking with a purpose, and what we're trying to do is sort of build this community of travelers who are socially and environmentally and politically engaged in all of these places that we travel to, and of course, the ones that we live in as well. And just finding that sort of educational, questioning, really digging deeper, combined with that adventurous style of travel was what got me kind of hooked.
Give us an idea of like what normal in air quotes, but like a normal trip with Operation Groundswell, right? It's a small group, maybe let's say like 5 to 8 people that, really want to travel differently and have an experience together. So what does that look like? Maybe from everywhere from like pick a location around the world, right? And maybe what happens on that experience that they go on.
So it's sort of the farthest thing from a hop on, hop off tour bus that you can find. We travel in small groups because it means we can travel to some really incredible places, and also because it brings a lot of sort of meaning to the people you're traveling with, and you're sort of going through this thing together. And so all of our programs follow one or two sort of main themes, but really weave in a lot of social and environmental justice elements throughout. But maybe the best example I can give is, or an example anyway. We have a program in Guatemala, and it's our Seed to Shelf program. And the idea is to follow a coffee bean from seed, where it's grown, all the way to shelf when we buy a bag of beans at our grocery store, or a cup of coffee from the coffee shop.
That's awesome.
So it's like, how do we take you on a journey to meet with the farmers who are growing your beans, both big producers and small producers, huge co-ops and tiny ones just starting out. What is the process that plant goes through? Who does it touch along the way? Who's impacted by it? Who regulates it? How does it move both sort of figuratively and literally through the world to end up in your cup of coffee? And so we sort of take that journey by meeting all of the people and staying with them along the way, and just kind of getting that full experience of what seems like a really simple thing that we do every morning as you wake up to a cup of coffee, and putting it into this global context, so that the next time you are back home and you're drinking your cup of coffee, you're thinking about what it took on sort of a global scale and a super local scale to get all the way there.
Yeah, I
So
travel the
yeah,
supply chain. It's really
yeah,
interesting. Like
yeah.
it's a really, I mean, I could see how that would be a really tremendous experience. And unfortunately, we haven't had to have these type of experiences, let's say the last 2 years now, give or take. I mean, kind of depending on
Yeah.
where you are in the world. But what was that last 2 years like for being a travel company, right? Like it had to be a whirlwind of emotions on a lot of different levels. But I guess talk about like when it first sort of hit and you guys and it realized that things were going to change quite drastically, for the brand and for the company. Like what were those initial days like?
I mean, the initial days when we still had programs on the ground were
Right.
hectic to say the least. But the thing that I've sort of appreciated the most about being at Operation Groundswell is our sort of commitment to our community and every single part of the community. And so, it was chaos getting people out of country, back home, figuring out what was going on, learning as everyone was, new information every day. But once the dust had settled, even just a little bit, I think some of our first questions were, how do we continue to support our whole community,
Mm-hmm.
including the people who we usually visit and support, in country, our community of program leaders and, staff and people in sort of the headquarters, if you will, and then our incredible community of alumni and travelers and hopeful travelers and future OG backpackers as well. So our first move was really to pivot a bit towards fundraising for our partners who we could no longer visit because we, promised and hoped to be with them for the past 2 years. And then,
Right.
with COVID just sort of exacerbating global inequities, we found it very important to do what we could to support them. And then, yeah, since then we've tried to figure out ways that we can connect them still with our community of travelers. So that's looked like a million different things. But yes, just always sort of founded on that question of like asking questions about, why we're doing things, who is it for, what impact can we have, what's within our sort of capability and how can we just keep digging in and asking questions and yeah, doing our best.
How is it sort of now kind of as our ability to travel some parts of in some different ways now, is there different now like protocols and like philosophies and like places you can go versus places you can't go? Like are there still a lot of hurdles that you still face with just sort of putting a sort of, again, just a normal trip together?
Definitely. I think it's been really interesting for us because as sort of like a boutique operator with all these like very personal relationships
Right.
with partners on the ground and with sort of a very strong commitment to being as responsible and sort of ethical as we can be, there's been a big tension in sort of like when, what feels right,
Yeah.
what is right in terms of traveling to these places that are, underserviced and sort of like globally oppressed and don't have the same access to vaccination and
Right.
all of that, while at the same time recognizing that a lot of their livelihoods depend on tourism and travelers and people who can come visit and engage and participate in the things that they have to offer. So for us right now, it's been pretty straightforward because the Canadian and the US governments up until very, very recently had been advising against non-essential travel. So yeah, we haven't traveled in almost 2 years now, but we're really looking forward to traveling again, hopefully this winter and then hopefully almost certainly, who's to say, but planning for this summer being, the time where we can really sort of comfortably and responsibly re-engage in community-based travel.
Yeah, I mean, it's just got to be dealing with all the legislation and just not even legislation, but just like you said, daily like updates of like, okay, you're free to do this, and then like a week later, it's like, no, that's shut down again, and it's like it's operationally just for a company, but then like also for a traveler, right, or a person who loves to embrace other cultures. And again, I think travel just is such that educational tool that is so needed for all of us, right? Like it's such a privilege to be able to travel and get that inspiration and meet people in different cultures. And I think we don't realize that globally that there is a dependency a little bit on tourism, right, for these certain areas that it does bring a lot of economic impact to that region. Maybe talk a little bit about that and how doing travel really well to a local region, like how does that look like in a really impactful way? What does that mean to really travel to a region and really respect culture, really embrace yourself in it, and also like be welcomed and treat people with like respect and have your dollar go like a really far way, right? When you sort of travel to these regions? Like, what does that sort of look like on the ground, like economic impact wise?
Really, really good question. And I love the question around impact. It's something that we talk about a lot because it's such a fascinating topic and it's really important. Originally, Operation Groundswell was sort of founded in response to or in questioning of volunteer travel organizations
Right.
and programs that were already in place. And, this was sort of early 2000s when headlines or marketing taglines like change the world or save a life in a week were much more common. And our question has always been, what does that impact actually look like? Like who is this impact that we're talking about on, and what does it mean? And I think, when you're looking to travel in a sustainable way and you're looking to quote unquote make an impact, I think the thing that you as a traveler often find sort of after the fact, if done well, is that you find that the impact is actually a lot on you and the way that
Right.
traveling and immersing in a culture changes the way that you act. And I think and think. And that to me is such an exciting, awesome, important reason why we exist, because we, like you said, we arguably need travel more than ever because it does change the way that we all think about each other. And it's how we connect with each other and how we think together and about each other in this increasingly sort of global world. And so, understanding how to make an impact, I think, is a lot in your mindset of who is this impact on and how can I sort of embrace that. Asking questions about if you're traveling with a group, who does the group work with? What is their relationship with local vendors?
Mm-hmm.
How long have they been working with them? Is there sort of like a vetting process? If you're traveling by yourself, just making sure that you ask the right questions for yourself as well. What are my values? What do I want to spend my money on? Who do I want to support? It's hard to do super well, and we're all going to be imperfect, but it's something that I've really appreciated working with Operation Groundswell, is just understanding how important partnerships can be in making sure that the impact that we want to have is the impact that we want to have.
And that's partnership with sort of local organizations.
Yeah, exactly. On our programs, we'll visit a number of what we call partners along the way, and they are sort of our partners, and we'll sort of work with them in different capacities. So whether we're staying with them, whether we're doing sort of an educational program with them, an activity, whatever it may be, and just because of how strong our relationships are with them, it's nice that we can feel confident that the impact that our dollars are having is what we sort of want it to be.
So let's talk about the future a little bit and like what is sort of the next steps. And you guys are launching Let's Rethink Travel Challenge. Talk about what that is and what the vision and mission of the challenge is.
So this is something that we're really, really pumped up about. So the challenge in sort of super short invites anyone and everyone to creatively think about what the future of travel could be like. We want to have this wide open conversation about this opportunity that we all have as industry, as individuals, as tour operators, as travelers, and as people to rethink the way that the world travels. This sort of like forced pause on travel, we hope has made people think, the next time that I do travel, what do I want it to look like? How can I make sure that it is reflective of what I care about and that we are sort of working towards travel as a force for good? So this challenge we've set up, in partnership with a lot of amazing people and organizations, is just an invitation to chat, an invitation to think critically and collaborate on what the future of travel could look like. So we're taking in submissions of any kind, visual art, dance, video, audio, you can write a song, whatever it might be, however you can best express the way that travel can be is sort of what we're looking for.
So I want to put the question on you. What do you think the future of travel does look like?
To be honest, I haven't thought about this in a really intentional way up until now because there's so many sort of elements to it. To me, I think the future of travel, and a travel that is a force for good, is people traveling with a wide open mind and being, one, intentional and at least thoughtful about how they spend their money.
Yeah.
And then two, really respectful and just sort of conscientious towards the people that are in these places that we visit. Like if we can just get people thinking critically about the places that they're visiting, and I don't know how to get people to care, but to think about and to to want to learn about the history and the context and the culture. If we can just get people interacting with other people who are different in a really meaningful way, I think the future of travel is very bright.
When we talk about spending money in an impactful way, what does that mean to you? Like, what does that look like from your perspective, or maybe Operation Groundswell's perspective on spending, money effectively when you travel? What does that look like, or what could it look like?
Yeah, good question. I think it's harder to do sort of on the fly. If you're in the moment, it's you're not going to be asking a bajillion questions about who owns this restaurant or whatever. But I think with sort of like pre-planned itinerary or group travel, you have an opportunity to do your research on the relationships that group has with local communities and sort of their values, and the types of activities as well can make quite a big difference. And also just understanding, like, what am I doing in this place? Like, what am I supporting with the things that I'm doing? And like, is there a way, and this isn't going to be for everyone. And so I think that's also just sort of like something to caveat. But if I'm in a place, is there a way to engage with current issues and challenges that are happening in this place, and to make sure that my values are aligned with sort of the activities I'm doing, the people I'm spending time with, the sort of places that I'm staying. I think an interesting sort of like example of this is communities who are experiencing food insecurity or particular sort of like natural disaster or civil rights or human rights issues, but it's still a really interesting tourist destination. Are you listening to the local community about what they want? Do they want travelers there? What kind of messages are they trying to send to the international community? And are you being like mindful of sort of the local community when you make those decisions on where to go?
The good thing is that Operation Groundswell kind of does all this for us, right? Is that like,
that's sort of the idea.
Is that going through somebody like OG to do this helps us feel better about if we travel with OG, then we know that stuff has been already taken into account, correct? That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's definitely the idea. And don't get me wrong, there's so much room and there's so much value in sort of independent travel as well. But I think what we're sort of hearing, especially post or sort of in the COVID era, is that it's a lot more comforting and sort of comfortable for people to travel with a group who has sorted all of those things out, who know that our values are aligned on the types of activities that I want to do, on the kind of work that they want to do, and that sort of my fundamental health and safety is going to be taken care of as well.
So I want to kind of end a little bit on your recommendations, and I want to talk a little bit about your sort of travel journey, because you have somehow planted 7,000 trees in one day and you cycled the length of Vietnam. So what would you recommend, maybe not first time travelers, but maybe somebody looking to do something really, really impactful when they travel, or take a really big journey? Like, what would you sort of recommend to that person of like what type of travel trip to take, and maybe set a certain intention of what their travel trip should be about?
So I was lucky to travel a lot independently before finding Operation Groundswell. I think if I had to redo it, I wouldn't change anything, but I think going the other way around might have made a bit more sense, because I think what I found is that after traveling, cycling the length of Vietnam independently and living in New Zealand independently and doing all these things by myself, I thought that I'd figured it out. I was like, oh yeah, like I know how to travel. I know, I'm a thoughtful person that wants to be a responsible, ethical traveler. I think I can find all of the sort of good spots. I only eat local and all these things. And I thought that I'd sort of figured it out.
Right.
But it wasn't until going on a program with Operation Groundswell that I was like, whoa, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I had no understanding of what it really takes to cultivate really meaningful relationships with local communities. It's a totally different experience to show up in a town and like sort of find the local guest house and just like stay there for a night and have dinner with the family, than it is to be very intentionally welcomed into a community of coffee farmers who
Yeah.
are going to share their life story and their life's work and everything with me because I'm a part of this organization that they trust so much.
So cool.
And that was like huge for me. I was like, yeah, I don't know anything. I don't know how anyone could possibly do this by themselves because there's just so much value in cultivating those really long, trusting, mutually respectful relationships that you just can't do by yourself. So that was a big moment for me. And I think it's important to experience both. But now that I have the perspective that I do from traveling with OG, it definitely changes the way that I travel by myself as well.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm excited to see what the next stage of OG is and the challenge what that brings. I think we'll be collaborating on some content going forward about sort of the future of travel and what that looks like from, you know, all of our perspectives. But I think that looking at the journey and the intention that you spoke about and when we're traveling, right, going from seed to shelf with sort of the coffee supply chain is such an amazing way to think about taking a journey, right? If we think about travel as kind of like going to the beach and kind of getting away and breaking away and just escaping essentially, right? But maybe we think about that different of what quote unquote vacation is or what travel is and really look at it as an intentional, you know, educational journey. I think that just intention is a big thing. I think if we do anything with intention, it always comes out better than if we did it with no intentions. So really love the mission and the work that you and the team are up to and best of luck the rest of this year and obviously as we move forward in the travel industry.